Hey there, I'm going to show you the sequence for a little bit of stretching and strengthening around the hip joint. Great for knee, foot, and ankle as well, so the whole lower body using the Theraband. So we're going to start first, just kind of find a comfortable place. You kind of wiggle around and then tip your tailbone down and up, do a little pelvic tilt. Just to find center. You can rock side to side, maybe do a few little circles, just little spirals, stirring pelvis and spine around. And then find neutral. So you've got a tiny little space in the lumbar spine, nice even weight distribution across the back of the pelvis. And then take your band and just wrap it around the kind of midfoot up to the toes, and you want it nice and flat. Underhand grip, so I take my thumb and hook it under, and then drop your elbows down. You want a pretty good bit of tension on the band, and then you push out and float it back in. And I'm thinking of having my foot plantar flex, the front of the ankle open as I press out, and then I soften hip, knee, and ankle, allow a little dorsiflexion there. So it's a demi point through the ball of the foot. I'm not wrapping or scrunching my toes. And as I press out, I exhale and think of dropping my belly back toward my spine. And then I inhale, soften hip, knee, and ankle on the return. You can think into the front, back, and sides of your thigh. The back of the leg in particular to initiate. And then the kneecap gently drawing up, the back of the knee opening as you straighten. And I just do about 8 to 10 repetitions, and then keep your legs straight, swing it straight up, get a little stretch at the top, and then exhale on the way down. So it's inhale, hinging at the hip. Exhale, belly scooping, drawing in and up. So as you lower your leg, notice if your back or your neck starts to tense. Can you keep the tension out of your neck? Put a little more work in the lower abdominals. It's a dynamic stretch, but it's also strengthening the lower abs with a little support from the band to support the weight of your leg. And then after about 8 to 10, you keep your leg straight up and then stir that leg in the hip socket. So circling down and around. I'm keeping my pelvis and my ribs fairly steady, but I'm not gripping or bracing anywhere. And then you just reverse it. So at this, it's about 5 in each direction. Just mobilizing the femur in the hip socket. Easy exhale, swooping breath. And then find the middle, and now just point and flex the foot. And again, I'm doing a little demi point. I'm not wrapping my toes, I'm pushing through the ball of the foot. And notice you can have your leg a little bit on the diagonal, you can have your knee a little bit soft if you feel your back starting to tighten up on you. You can have your leg even more up if you're more flexible without gripping in the hip flexors. Belly just softening down toward the floor. And then start to stir your foot around. And one of the challenges here is to keep your knee very steady. So I'm just checking in that my knee is staying in the same place, and I'm just moving from the ankle joint. Let's reverse it. So I'm the tibia and fibula in the lower leg wrapping around the talus bone. They kind of widen and narrow. And then softening your neck after about 5 to 8 in each direction. You can bend your knee, rest your foot on the other knee, and just wiggle your fingers. Sometimes hands get a little tired after holding the band. And then kick that leg out. Now let's do a static stretch. So you just climb up the band with your hands, draw your leg toward you. Again, if you're really tight in your back or your hamstrings, you just soften your knee. Feels kind of good to have a micro bend in the knee regardless of how flexible you are. Think of drawing the pinky toe toward you, the inner edge of the heel away from you, and let your shoulders drop down into the floor. You can think of softening the space behind your collarbones. Walk the other foot a little further away, and then reach that leg across your midline. Sickle your foot. So now the big toe side goes down. The outer edge of the heel goes up to the ceiling. And I can feel a stretch through the peroneals and the lower leg all the way up the outside of that thigh. And if you notice, check in that you're not hiking your hip up toward your ribs. You're really reaching and kind of spinning that sit bone across toward the inner edge of the opposite heel. And then you get a better stretch all throughout. And notice how I'm using the same side hand to pull back, my elbow back toward the floor. And then swing it out to the other side. Switch to the other hand holding and counterbalance with the opposite leg. So inner thigh stretch, and I can use the same side hand to draw the leg towards me a little bit more. Think of your pubic bone lengthening away from you, your tailbone unraveling, the weight of your bones just falling toward the floor. And then bring it back up to center. And then an easy transition to the other side. You just take your foot, place it in the band. Again, get it nice and flat, lots of surface area from the midfoot to the toes. Underhand grip with your knee bent. Soften your neck, your jaw, maybe even tip the tailbone down and up a few times. Find your neutral. And then press out, plantar flex. The front of the ankle is open. Fold it back in, dorsiflex, so the front of the ankle softens. So I push demi-point through the ball of the foot, and then hip, knee, and ankle fold back in. I'm initiating from the abdominals and the back of the leg from the start, and then sides of the thigh, the front, the quad kicks in at the very end to get that last bit of extension of the knee. Throughout, all sides of the thigh are really working, but thinking in that sequence helps keep you from over-recruiting just the quad in the front. That's kind of the pitfall with this one, is to just focus in the front of the knee. And we really want to feel front, back, and sides. Once more like that. And then you keep your leg straight, swing it straight up, dynamic stretch, and then exhale on the way down. Inhale, folding, hinging at the hip, and exhale down. And the more I get that neutral placement in my pelvis, the more I don't jam my back into the floor, the more I'm going to feel the stretch all the way up close to the origin of the hamstring, close to the sit bone. So notice if you can maintain the little space in your lumbar spine so you're not smashing down. I like to imagine I've got a little grape under my lower back, and I'm not smashing the grape. I'm keeping the integrity of the lumbar. And now this time leg stays up, and then circle that leg around. Oh, I can feel I'm starting to tense a little bit across my shoulders, so I'm just softening there. And then a little reverse, swooping breath, exhale, swooping down and around. Hey, Dano. And then keep your leg center, and then just point and flex, reaching through the ball of the foot, and then flexing back in. And remember, you adjust the angle of your leg, whatever feels best for you. No gripping in your back or your hip. Maybe soften the knee, a little micro bend, and then stir your foot around. Circling foot and ankle without turning your knee, so the thigh bone stays steady in the hip socket. And then reverse it, feeling that widening and narrowing of the lower leg, spaciousness around the ankle, and then bend it in, wiggle your fingers, your hands, and then kick it back up. Hamstring, static stretch, pinky toe side drawing toward you, inner edge of the heel reaching away from you. And oh, I just noticed I was smushing my back into the floor, so can I lengthen my tailbone away from the crown of my head And then I get a stretch all the way up to the origin of the hamstrings. And then you reach across your midline, same side arm pulls back, sickle your foot. So the big toe goes down, the outer edge of the heel goes up. Spin that hip open, the sit bone reaching toward the inner edge of the heel. If you want a little more stretch, use the opposite hand to draw your leg toward you. And then open, counterbalance. So I switch to the other hand holding the band. Pubic bone releasing away from my sternum, pubic bone widening in the front, tailbone unraveling. Soften that space behind the collarbones, the scalenes. And then bring it back to center. And let that go. All right, my friend, give that a try.